I want you to consider a mind-blowing fact to start your day. Right now, like as you are listening to this, inside of you there are exactly 37 trillion cells.
Yeah, 37 trillion. It is a staggering number to try and just, wrap your head around.
It really is. And here's the truly wild part about that. Every single one of those 37 trillion cells is perfectly doing its job without a single drop of ego, without any confusion, and definitely without needing a round of applause.
Right. It's 37 trillion living units, all operating in total silent synchronicity, just to keep you sitting upright and breathing while you listen to this.
Exactly. And that staggering biological reality is actually the mission of today's deep dive. We are looking at this fascinating collection of biological essays and psychological research, all stitched together under the title Cells versus Cells.
It's a really brilliant framing for the material.
Oh, completely. The goal here is to explore this massive, honestly, almost uncomfortable gap between the pure biological truth of our bodies, so those 37 trillion perfect workers, and the manufactured, highly dramatic reality of our minds.
Okay, let's unpack this because reading through these sources, it just completely flips the script on how we think about our own biology.
Yeah, it really does.
Like we usually treat a phrase like listening to your body as, I don't know, a wellness cliche, maybe a metaphor for taking a nap when you're tired. But the material frames it as a literal biological imperative.
Well, the sources establish right away that your body isn't just a meat vehicle transporting your brain from meeting to meeting.
A meat vehicle. That's a great way to put it.
Right. I mean, it is an intelligence center in its own right. But to really grasp the magnitude of that intelligence, we have to establish the baseline of physical perfection first.
Yeah.
We have to look at how the physical body actually operates before we can contrast it with how the mind complicates things.
So where do we start with that baseline? We start with the fact that out of those 37 trillion cells, not a single one is performing for an audience.
Wow.
None of them are cycling through rehearsed grievances or spiraling about something a neighboring cell did 5 years ago. They just do the work.
They don't manufacture sensation to fill a void, they just respond. And the way they communicate is, frankly, incredibly complex. I mean, it's not just one method, right?
Oh, not at all. They're constantly talking to each other via chemical signaling, electrical impulses, mechanical pressure, and thermal gradients.
And it's the how of this that is so fascinating to me. Like, take mechanical pressure, for example. We think of communication as talking, like what we're doing right now. But in your blood vessels, if the pressure spikes, the cells physically feel the stretch.
Yes, the physical geometry actually acts as a language.
Right, that mechanical stretching literally pulls open channels in the cell membrane, allowing ions to flood in, which then instantly tells the surrounding tissue to dilate and relieve the pressure. It's instantaneous.
And thermal gradients work very similarly. I mean, immune cells can act almost like heat-seeking missiles.
Wait, heat-seeking missiles? How does that work?
So, if there's an injury or an infection, the localized temperature rises by fractions of a degree. It's tiny. But the surrounding cells detect that microscopic thermal shift and migrate directly toward the heat source to begin repairs.
That is wild.
There is no debate. There's no ego management. If a pathogen enters the system, the alarm sounds, and the response is entirely coordinated based on the physical reality of the moment.
You know, it makes me think of an analogy. It's like a massive 37 trillion piece orchestra. But in this orchestra, nobody wants to be the soloist.
Oh, like that.
Like, not a single cell cares about having their name on the marquee or taking a bow. They only care about playing the symphony correctly together. And the text points out a crucial distinction here about how we view this. As humans, we tend to romanticize our inner workings as a sort of cellular democracy where everyone gets a vote.
Which is a very human projection. The cellular network is not a democracy. It is something much older and, honestly, much more functional. The author calls it a distributed intelligence.
A distributed intelligence, not a democracy.
Right. Because a democracy implies debate, hesitation, and competing agendas. Distributed intelligence means each part responds truthfully to the actual conditions it finds itself in, not the conditions it wishes were happening or the conditions it wants to perform for the outside world.
That is radical in its clarity. And because that biological intelligence is so perfectly distributed, it processes reality at a speed that our conscious minds simply cannot match, which introduces this whole concept of somatic knowing.
Yes, the speed of the body.
Somatic basically meaning of the body, entirely distinct from the mind. Somatic intelligence literally is cellular intelligence. These cells have been sensing and knowing continuously without a single interruption since your very first breath.
And the author gives these very visceral examples of that, too.
Yeah, like that sudden gut knot you get right before you consciously realize you're in danger. Or that heavy, sudden fatigue that hits you when you're around a person who just drains your energy.
Or that weird, inexplicable lift in your chest right before a moment of joy.
Exactly. The text argues that those aren't psychological phenomena. They are purely cellular. The body is always ahead of the mind. But I actually have to push back on the practical reality of this for a second.
Okay, go for it.
So if my gut is giving me a signal, how do I know it's pure somatic knowing and not just my anxiety manifesting physically? Because my brain is incredibly good at making my stomach hurt. And we're taught the brain is the ultimate control center. So if the head is where we process everything, why are we always told to get out of our heads?
Well, what's fascinating here is how the source material directly dismantles that exact assumption.
Really? How so?
The head, in somatic terms, at least, is not actually where the knowing happens. The head is just where the knowing is managed.
Oh, interesting.
Think of it as the administrative desk. It interprets, it approves, or, very often, it overrules the raw data coming in. The difference between pure somatic knowing and anxiety is narrative.
Narrative. Okay, unpack that.
Somatic knowing is immediate and unattached to a story. It's just a raw signal. Anxiety requires a narrative loop. It needs a story to sustain it. The mind isn't the primary sensor, you know. It is always just trying to catch up to what the cells have already figured out.
So if we look at it like a live sporting event, the cells are the athletes actually playing the game in real time, and the brain is just the commentator up in the broadcast booth.
That captures the dynamic perfectly.
The commentator isn't playing the game. They're just watching the plays, interpreting them, and trying to assign meaning and a storyline to a tackle or a goal that has already happened down on the field.
Right. The cells experience the reality of the terrain instantly. The commentator has to wait for the visual, interpret it, decide how it fits into the broader storyline of the season, and then speak on it. And a massive amount of misinterpretation can happen in that delay.
So if the cells are perfectly executing the play, and the brain is just up in the booth trying to narrate it, what happens when the commentator decides to start making up their own game?
Well, that brings us to the exact opposite of the biological cell, the psychological cell.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the text dives into the etymology of the word cell itself. We have the biological meaning, right? The fundamental unit of life. But the word cell has a whole other inheritance.
It does. It comes from architecture, from carceral history, like a prison cell, and from monastic traditions.
Yeah, it means a small, enclosed room, a place where you were put, a place that limits movement, defined entirely by what it keeps out.
And the author argues that when a person is disconnected from their somatic intelligence, they become trapped in that second definition. They're stuck in a psychological cell. It's a loop of drama, which is a performance pattern sustained by artificial feeling.
Wow.
They're living inside a carceral cell of their own making while walking around assuming they're still engaged with reality.
You know, drama is a word that gets thrown around so casually, usually to describe office gossip or reality TV. But the source draws a hard line between actual emotion and this concept of drama.
It's a very important distinction.
Right, because biological emotion has a strict lifespan. It's an ocean wave. It comes, it peaks, it recedes, and then it integrates back into your system. It resolves. Drama, in this framework, is the simulation of emotion. It does not resolve, it cycles.
Exactly. And because it's a simulation, it requires constant maintenance. It is a feedback loop, a performed sensation substituted for the real thing.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. And it absolutely requires an audience, either other people or an internal audience of yourself watching yourself be upset. Without a witness, drama collapses because underneath it, there's just an emptiness.
So if biological emotion is an ocean wave that naturally crashes on the shore, drama is a wave pool machine that you refuse to turn off.
That's a great visual.
And speaking from personal experience, I know I can spiral for 3 days over an ambiguous text message from a friend that just says, okay, with a period.
Well, we've all been there.
Right. My brain will manufacture an entire narrative about how they secretly hate me, generating all this synthetic panic, while my actual biological cells are just down there trying to digest a turkey sandwich and keep me alive.
And running that wave pool machine takes an immense amount of metabolic power.
Well, yeah. If that wave pool machine never shuts off, the engine is eventually going to burn out. This isn't just a bad mental habit. This psychological drama actually wages physical war on those 37 trillion biological cells we talked about earlier.
We connect this to the bigger picture. The body doesn't judge you morally for your drama. The body doesn't care if your narrative about that text message is justified or not. But the body is metabolically opposed to drama.
Metabolically opposed, meaning you are paying a literal price in tissue.
Exactly. We have to look at the physiological mechanics of this. When your brain is simulating a threat like spiraling over a text message, it triggers the exact same chemical cascade as if you were being physically hunted.
Wait, literally the same cascade?
Literally. Yeah. Your hypothalamus signals your adrenal glands to dump cortisol and adrenaline into your bloodstream. Your heart rate variability drops. Over time, this chronic stress, which is what psychological drama is at the biological level, degrades your telomeres.
Just to pause there for a second, telomeres are like the little protective plastic caps at the ends of your shoelaces, but for your DNA strands, right, they keep your chromosomes from fraying when cells divide. So you're saying that sitting in a psychological cell of your own making literally frays your DNA faster. It accelerates cellular aging.
Yes, it impairs your immune function. It disrupts your cortisol rhythms, meaning you can't sleep when you should and you can't wake up when you need to, and it drastically increases systemic inflammation.
That is terrifying.
Every single cycle of drama sustained beyond a natural emotional response is a tax levied directly on your cellular health.
Wow. So staying in that psychological cell of drama is like putting a car in neutral and just slamming on the gas pedal. You are generating massive heat, you are burning through fuel, you are degrading the engine, but you aren't actually moving an inch forward. The engine is roaring, but there's zero forward momentum, just pure metabolic waste.
That is spot on. But, the text also explores the extreme opposite reaction. Because not everyone responds to the world by slamming on the gas in neutral.
Okay, what do they do instead?
Some people react to the overwhelming nature of life by totally severing the connection to the engine. The source calls this disconnect. Disconnect is the absence of felt sensation altogether.
This is where the cellular signal just gets routed to a windowless room. But how does the body actually achieve that? I mean, how do you suppress 37 trillion cells trying to hand you data?
It actually happens through physical suppression. The cognitive overlay becomes so dense that the person begins to unconsciously alter their physical posture to block the signals.
Like tensing up.
Exactly. It's muscle armoring.
Great.
Chronically tightening the shoulders or the jaw. It's shallow chest breathing, where you clamp down your diaphragm so your vagus nerve simply stops sending visceral data upward from your gut to your brain.
So you're literally choking off the physical signal.
Yes. And this ranges from severe clinical dissociation to something that is actually highly rewarded in modern corporate culture. The person who lives entirely above the neck.
Oh, I know that type. The perfectly stoic person who processes every conflict, every joy, and every loss as a purely intellectual idea on a spreadsheet. But they cannot tell you what they physically feel about anything.
Right. So both the person screaming and crying over manufactured drama and the perfectly calm person who lives above the neck are actually suffering from the exact same fundamental problem. They've both broken from cellular reality.
They are both living in the second type of cell.
Precisely. One cage is made of excessive performance, and the other cage is made of silence and suppression. In drama, the body's signal is amplified and looped past its natural lifespan. In disconnect, the signal is physically armored against and reinterpreted until it disappears.
So in both scenarios, the person is using their body merely as a stage or a prop, rather than allowing it to function as the incredible intelligence center it actually is.
Yes, that's exactly it.
So if both of these extremes trap you in a cage, I mean, the obvious question is, how do we break out? How do we escape the psychological cell and return to our biological reality?
Well, the source material offers a very clear, if incredibly challenging, path. It comes down to intentionally dropping into the cellular field.
The cellular field.
Yeah, and the cellular field has a very different texture than the mind. It is immediate, it is highly specific, it is totally present, unglamorous, and crucially, it operates without narrative.
And operating without narrative is profoundly difficult for modern humans. Our entire society is built on the assumption that meaning only comes through articulation. We all want to be the main character in a movie, but cells do not narrate.
No, they don't.
No.
So simply acts. Somatic knowing arrives as a raw sensation. It's a physical shift, an unconscious lean toward someone, a sudden contraction in your shoulders, an expansion in your chest.
Drama happens when the mind swoops in too fast. It's like the interpretive commentator in the broadcast booth intercepts that raw cellular signal, like that tiny contraction in your shoulder, and before you can even feel it, the brain packages it into a performance. It's like, I'm contracting my shoulder because so-and-so disrespects me, and they always disrespect me, and I have to defend myself. boom, you're in the wave pool of drama.
And conversely, disconnect is the commentator refusing to acknowledge the shoulder contraction happened at all, pretending the game isn't even being played.
So how do we stop the commentator?
The work of somatic life, which the author points out is both the most demanding and the most rewarding work available to us, is learning to catch that signal. It's the discipline of receiving the bodily transmission before the mind tidies it up.
Before you turn it into a story.
Exactly. Before you make it socially acceptable or narratively satisfying or defensive, it's just feeling the raw shift, the raw lean, the raw contraction, and letting it resolve the way an ocean wave resolves on the beach.
It's like trying to learn a language you already speak perfectly but completely forgot that you knew. You have to tolerate the sheer discomfort of not having an immediate, articulate story to tell yourself about what you were feeling in any given moment.
It requires immense patience. Letting the body speak first means letting go of the illusion that your brain is in control of everything.
Man, that is powerful. Let's bring this all together. We started with the flawless silent orchestration of 37 trillion biological cells. They use pressure, heat, and chemistry to flawlessly communicate without ego, just doing the work of keeping you alive. Then we explored the other kind of cell, the carceral cages we build out of manufactured drama that burns out our telomeres, or the silent, windowless rooms we build out of muscle armoring and dissociation. And finally, we arrived at this profound realization. Your body is constantly, desperately trying to hand you the truth of your reality if you would just stop narrating over it.
The signal is always there.
It is. I want to speak directly to you listening to this right now. Your cells do not need your permission to function. As we speak, they are clearing waste, they are repairing tissue, they are generating energy, they are doing the work regardless of what your mind is obsessing over. But the quality of your life, your presence, your joy, the accuracy of your reactions to the world depends entirely on a choice. Are you going to live in your physical cells or are you going to live in a psychological cell? Because the biological one, the one made of 37 trillion perfect workers, is already lit from within. So what does this all mean? How do we take this incredibly deep biological philosophy and let it actually change how we move through the world tomorrow?
I think we have to look at the ripple effect. If we accept that cellular communication is all about chemical and electrical signals constantly interacting with the environment, we have to ask what happens when you introduce a massive change to that environment.
What kind of change?
Well, if you manage to finally step out of your psychological cell, if you drop the manufactured drama, if you stop the endless internal narration, and you choose to live in pure somatic truth, what happens to the people around you?
Oh, wow.
Does your newfound biological clarity, your refusal to play into the simulation of emotion, act like a new frequency? Does your groundedness, your quiet nervous system, silently force the literal cells of the people in your life to resonate with a more authentic reality?
You literally become a different frequency for the people around you. Think about that the next time you feel the urge to rev the engine in neutral and feed the drama. You have 37 trillion allies inside you, waiting for you to just let them lead. We'll catch you on the next deep dive into the source material.